Now we're going to apply our principles of the hammer, weight at the top, long skinny shaft, to the hind leg. Starting at the top with the pelvis, the bones of the pelvis, and you see an immediate difference between the hind leg and the front leg. The pelvis is pretty firmly anchored to the backbone. And that's because the pelvis is where most of the propulsive force from the hind leg gets transferred to the backbone and trunk, and you don't want this to be a sloppy joint. It's got to be as rigid as possible. Obviously it can move, but it's nowhere near as flexible as the joint or the articulation between the front leg, the scapula, and the body, which is much more mobile. This one is not as mobile. It's very anchored. The pelvis articulates with the femur, the thigh bone, and you can see the thigh bone, much like the humerus in the front leg, is fairly long, but the stifle, instead of being halfway down the leg like our own stifle is, the stifle is almost within the outline of the body. So once again, the top part of the limb is shorter, and the long part of the limb makes most of the shaft. As we come down past the stifle, we come into the region of the lower leg, down to the ankle, bones of the ankle, and this is where we find two bones, the tibia and fibula. But as we saw in the front limb, one of them's large and does all the work, and one of them is a tiny little reduction and almost does nothing. I don't think it causes many problems. In some horses it can, but that's the fibula. And the reason is because, as with the front limb, we don't want the ankle to be able to do any of this. We want the ankle just to go straight up and down, just like that. And the way that's done is by taking out any motion at this joint. So this joint is just a straight hinge. Our next segment of the leg is from the ankle down. The ankle or tarsus is this series of bones here. And if we look how far that is above the ground, if you think of how we stand, this whole region of the leg, the foot, is flat on the ground. Whereas in the horse, it's all up in the air. So the whole length of the foot, from the ankle to the tiptoe, is added to the length of the hammer shaft. You've got this relatively long, light piece of the leg added onto the bottom of the shaft. So it really maximizes the length of the shaft. And as in the front leg, as we get below the ankle joint, we get to metatarsals, which are the same as the bones in the arch of your foot. And we've got 3, 4, number 3 here, number 4, and number 2 on the far side. 2 and 4 are the splint bones, and they end about here. And the cannon bone or metatarsal 3 is doing all of the work. And from about here down, the front foot and the hind foot look different, but in terms of their function, they're doing pretty much the same thing. So we've got a springing mechanism going on here that we'll talk about when we get to the tendons. But the point to take away from the skeleton is a long, skinny skeleton maximizing the length and the lightness of the shaft of the hammer.